right. Well, this is kind of exciting. It's also a little bit scary. Because I for the first time am doing something a little bit off script. So hello everyone. My name is William. I'm the host of WAYTAT. And right now you're listening to Fireside Chat with WAYTAT. Uh so this is just a little something that I wanted to do outside of the main show. Just something a little bit more mellow, no real research behind it, no script behind it, nothing like that. Just nice, calm, easy thing for me to do. Um, just to add another thing to the show, um, add some more stuff to do, so that I'm not running out of steam, running out of traction, and kind of burning the candle at both ends all the time. Uh, and how I'm gonna have this work is every time I do one of these episodes, probably every research week, is I am going to have a wheel up that I pick a topic from. I'm gonna try to talk about it for about half an hour, maybe a little bit less than that, but we're just gonna we're just gonna talk. It's also I'm not gonna edit this unless I say something just way off the cuff. Uh, it I can't guarantee that I'm gonna be swearing a lot less, or that I'm not gonna say something really gross. So if you think that this is a good way to like introduce someone younger to the show, I'd stay away from that. But yeah. Without further ado, let's spin the wheel. Here, I'll look around my mic a little bit. Okay, spin it down. How do you feel about the place of nerddom right now? All right. So there's that prompt. Delete that. Okay. Um. So right now, I kind of feel like the nerd community is a little bit in a weird place. And when I say that, what I mean is that we've started to hit the mainstream a bit, and I mean we've been hitting the mainstream for, whew, man, almost like a decade and a half now. Um, but what we're starting to experience is the thing that I think other hobbies have started to experience. We've started to realize that we are not as exclusive as a club as we thought because for a long time, and this was really before my time as well. I only really consider myself like a generational nerd. I don't even necessarily uh, I don't see myself as an old blood, but I also don't see myself as a newcomer. I was kind of raised up in it, but we're in a position now where for so long, and if you've listened to WAYTAT Nerd, I mean, really, nerd culture started in the 1960s, but since the 1960s up until, hey man, maybe the early to mid 90s, nerd culture was just the weird stuff that the weird outsider kids did that they'd get bullied for, and like picked on and harassed about. And then, in the mid 90s, things started to really change. I think, honestly, a lot of that was because of how nerds were treated, because most of the nerds during those older times were also the people making the games. So like thinking back to like, um, the 70s with Gary Gygax and his group, they made D&D because they were nerds that really enjoyed war games, and they based D&D off of a war game that they also made. And the reason why early editions of D&D were so wordy and had so much math was because like through and through, they really were nerds. They enjoyed doing math and studying and like figuring stuff out like that. So they were making it kind of exclusive to just people who were also good at math and understood like these weird historical references and like these weird literature references. And so, nerds and the old bloods especially kind of self-selected to be the, I guess, like the more intellectual people, who, back in the olden days, before the modern era, usually ended up pretty fucking successful. Um, so they, yeah, I think they, I think the old blood nerds basically rose to power in a lot of different fields, and occupations, and raised like the intergenerational nerds like me who weren't bullied as much because their parents saw like, oh yeah, that kid that I didn't help who got shoved into the locker is now a multimillionaire. So when you see the nerd kid, don't fuck with him because one day he might be running the company that you're working on the factory line for. So be nice to him in case he comes down to the factory floor one day and maybe helps you out a bit. So yeah, I think we are just starting to see the point where people are being introduced to nerddom in a way that isn't like it's an exclusive boys club or this overcomplicated, like weird niche thing. It's just kind of becoming like the thing that everyone does. And so I think even the definition of being a nerd has started to change. And those of us who've been raised up by old bloods or old bloods themselves, we're not comfortable with that. And we're not comfortable with that because we've kind of been raised with this intergenerational trauma of like, no, people don't like you because of your interests. Your interests are weird, and you need to protect those things, and like, you need to stand up for each other, and like, you need to fight off the bullies and like the people that are trying to infiltrate the club, and that's not really happening nowadays. So like, we have this weird thing, um, where again a lot of the old bloods and a lot of the old bloods also grew up and have mostly played games and done uh played and ran in games that have almost entirely been hardcore. At least what we would describe nowadays as hardcore. Like there was no mercy, and a big part of the enjoyment was kind of the Schadenfreude of like watching your friends just absolutely fuck something up and die. And now, because of how nerddom's kind of proliferated our entire culture, um, with like how popular things like D&D have become, um, how popular like fantasy and sci-fi video games are, and like how normalized it is now to talk about it, and also like so many of our incredibly popular TV shows and movies are huge nerd sinks. Um, it's kind of become more and more socially acceptable to be a nerd, and again, we're not used to that. And it's also softened a lot, which was the point I was trying to get to. See, not scripted. But it's softened a lot to where now it's hard for people who've been in this for a while to recognize it. Because it used to be back in the day, like, you know, I was just editing my race coding episode because I wanted to add tags into it. But I was editing that episode and I realized, like, you know, maybe part of the reason why old bloods have such a big problem with this is because back in their day, things were in black and white. And it's not because they didn't think about that, because they were nerds in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Of course, they thought about it. it's not because they didn't think about it. It's because at that time, what they were striving for wasn't a world of inclusivity. What they were striving for was a world where they felt like that they were the ones in control and in power and in charge. And the easiest way to do that is to make them the only people in the entire world with agency and interest and depth. So I don't know. But I think it's also a very similar case with other episodes we've done, like Boob Armor and like self inserts, the waifus. It's I think that the world now of inclusive gaming, where people who are queer, people who are women, people who aren't white, are not only offered a seat at the table, but are given a pretty strong voice at the table, and very, very quickly. I think that puts a lot of old bloods off, and again, not like in the way that they are being outright, sexist, racist, or homophobic, but I think more in just a sense that like that's not how they've grown up with nerddom. Um, and, I've been spared from that mostly because I've been raised pretty leftist, pretty liberal. Um, for those of you that don't understand the difference, I'm not. Let's not get into that. That's for a different episode. For another episode of the Fireside Chat, I'll get into that. But yeah, I was raised in a way to, in my normal day to day life, try to be as inclusive as possible with people and try to understand things from other people's perspectives. And it it molded me in a way where I see this new wave of nerds, and I am happy and excited because, man, does it suck trying to run a game and get players interested. And it would be so much easier if everyone knew, like, hey, he wants to play D&D. He's been playing D&D since he was 12 years old. He's good at D&D. Please, for the love of God, can you teach me how to play so I can also be a good player? Like that, I love that. I have had people that I haven't talked to since high school talk to me and be like, "Hey, I want to play D&D. How do you do that?" And like it is a fun experience. And I've had the same thing happen to me in college. Now that I'm out of college, like people I've uh met and talked to at like workplaces and stuff, they have similar desires. There's a lot of people that are becoming interested in nerddom, and so I think really like the place of nerddom in the world is this weird combination of uniting force, as well as a honestly a weird combination of being a uniter, but also being a place of safety and sanctuary. Um, because oh, I just had the thought and I'm already getting a little teary eyed. Excuse me. Because nerds for so long, we have been pushed down and bullied for the things that we love for a long time. So a lot of us, especially those who are the most inviting, know how that feels. We don't want other people to go through that. And so when we see people who are, getting bullied for being queer or for being a woman or for being a different fucking color than the people around them or for being disabled, uh, some part of us wants to reach out to them. If we've been raised in a way where it's like, no, you protect people who are being bullied, um, and you've inherited the generational trauma, really, of the nerd community, seeing people be attacked and oppressed, it makes you want to offer them sanctuary. And for us, our sanctuary is the games that we play. is the hobbies that we have. It's our place of sanctuary is not like most people's of a lot of people's places of sanctuary are places like the gym, which I will say for me, the gym is also a place of sanctuary for me. But it's not like the gym. It's not going out. It's our place of sanctuary and happiness and comfort would be like leaned over a desk painting miniatures, or sitting around a table with like four or five other people who we call assholes, but absolutely love, and playing a game of D&D. That is where we feel like we are safe. And so I feel like a lot of us want to invite people into those spaces because we don't know where else to put them. Um and I think that's really made our community a bastion uh for people, and especially creative people that want to live out these fantasies but don't know where else to do it. And so I see nerddom as very positive overall in the world. I guess that's where all this rambling is going. Um, but I do also see some threat, some danger in that, because again, we do have those parts of the community that we try not to advertise. Like, look, as much as like us like healthy woke nerds try not to admit it, and yes, I know it's I know it's a little ironic saying I'm a healthy nerd. Um, but as much as we try to distance ourselves from it, we have to admit that like neckbeards are part of our community, and that's something that we have to reckon with, and is something that we have to try and correct. And I don't mean correct as in like kick them out necessarily. I mean like correct, like we should try to change their behaviors, um, and stop it from happening in the first place. But like we have to understand that a part of being a nerd and inheriting that trauma is that some people are not going to inherit that trauma and become caretakers. Some people are going to inherit that trauma and become bitter and angry. They're going to see this new wave of people coming in, and they're going to feel like their place in the community is threatened. Or even worse, they're going to see these new people coming in, and their first thought is not going to be like, oh, more people to play the game with. Their first thought is going to be, this is someone trying to infiltrate the group. This is someone trying to break up the band. Because in their mind, like, they go back to the safe space that they were in 1985 when they got home from school. It was a terrible day, and they remembered, I have D&D tonight. And they were able to sit around a table with their, three best friends and pretend that they were in a fantasy world and that they were the heroes and they got the girl and they beat the monster. That's definitely not Chaz from class. And they felt that moment of happiness and victory, and that is what kept them going. And then to see people now push for like, hey, maybe we should invite a girl to the table, that brings them back to when they first stopped playing. That brings them back to like, oh well, yeah, I had a rough day, but I don't have time for D&D because two of my friends have girlfriends now, and they don't want to be weird in front of their girlfriends, so they don't play D&D anymore. And like, I have to work, and my other buddy has to work, and we just don't have time for it anymore. And losing that sanctuary in part because people had new relationships, seeing new people come in is scary because like, again, they look like the same people that took their sanctuary away. um I again, I think that's all stuff that we have to reckon with as a community. We have to admit that, like, we have this kind of generational trauma, and we need to turn back and talk it out with each other, and we need to figure out, like, if I was gonna say if we want to be a sanctuary, I think we should want to be a sanctuary and be a place for people to go when they need help and they need to feel grounded and calm and have control over their situation, where they can go and they can feel like that's what they have. Uh, and I think we need to kind of force some people to get on board with that, or at the very least convince them, like, hey, we're going to be doing this. You don't have to change a thing. You can invite your three best friends over, and you can sit in the basement and you can order pizza and drink soda until you're sick and pretend like it's the 1980s again, except this time you're old enough to go to the dispensary and buy weed. And I'm gonna say, like, it's kind of how my dad plays, and it's a lot of fun. Um, but that's not how I prefer to play. I prefer to play in a way that brings people that I feel like need it to the table. I want to play in games where I feel like the people who are coming to the table are coming to the table because it's like, I need something. I need something to feel an emotion that is either uncomfortable that I want to address, or I need to feel like I'm safe. Um and again, more broadly, because I mostly come at it from a role playing game perspective. That's where I really heavily got into identifying as a nerd. But um, I think it's the same with cosplay, anime, um, comic books. I mean, movies. There are film nerds are a different fucking level. Let me tell you. But like, I think it's the same there too. I think I think the community overall, we gotta be the sanctuary. Um, I think we aren't there yet, though. We still have a lot of work to do, and while on one hand I do really like how much the community's opened up, there is something that I do agree with from kind of the old bloods. It's that it doesn't feel homey anymore. There's a lot of parts. I mean, like the smaller parts of the community and like the things that are just developing and growing, those still feel like home. Those still feel like you could like call the company on the phone and be like, "Hey, we have this rules dispute. Do you mind solving it?" And they'd get into this big lore conversation with you, and you could like write down notes and be like, "Oh my god, thank you so much. That's really cool. I didn't know that about this character." And then 3 hours later, you finally have the phone and you forget what you were doing. But there's so much in the nerd community where that's not the case anymore. I mean, with like how popular conventions have gotten and the number of celebrities that show up to those, it doesn't feel like home. It feels like going to like a screening, or it feels like kind of going to an advertising space, or like I guess like a content creator meetup. It doesn't feel the same. Um, and it's the same thing with open, I guess like open source D&D and stuff. Like fifth edition has been a huge forward step for bringing new people in, but it's kind of devastated the community, and not just because of the stuff the Wizards of the Coast has done, but because it doesn't it doesn't feel like just a place to sit down with your friends and talk about shit. It feels more and more corporate, I guess, is kind of what I'm trying to say. and that's really uncomfortable. Um, for me, especially being such an anti-corporate leftist that I am, it feels uncomfortable to have a part of the community feel like it's being torn away, and that we don't have this cozy, unified feel anymore. That there's like this weird echelon of like this category of nerd up here are the people who have the money and are treating this like a corporation and not like it's a hobby space, and it's not like the place we go for fun. Um but yeah. I mean that's I mean, look, the point of these is to be a bit rambly, but that definitely felt a bit rambly. I hope I addressed that question a bit. But let me know what you think. Do you think that we, as a community, are heading towards that positive sanctuary direction, or are we, heading towards this corporate dystopia like a lot of other places are? Or maybe, hey, I just had this thought: we could try to weaponize the the neckbeardia of our of our community, but that's more of a comment section discussion. But yeah, so thank you for listening to this first episode of Fireside Chat with WAYTAT. Um, I have been your host. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff. Put in the comments your opinion. What is the place of nerddom? Um, and I'll try to communicate with you on those. The good thing is that right now I'm still operating small enough where I can talk to all of you guys if you put comments down. Um, but yeah, thank you so much for listening. Um, the new episodes of WAYTAT will be out this week. I'm posting this past midnight on Monday. So it'll be out this week. Um, and so listen to those. Come back for this next time, and have a good night out there. See ya.